There is something else that, in fact, came to my mind during the discussion of the actor, and then I was defending that the polymath had could encompass all the other three, and then I was talking about the actor, and you added that the actor lacks the creation aspect, but there is something very important and very important to many people, which is a question that I have been receiving and seeing a lot lately. A lot of people talking about that, which is authenticity. And in the context of the actor who plays many roles, but he's not being profound or authentic in each of them. And the polymathic person would be a counterpoint that the polymath would really live all those lives authentically. So what could you add inside?
Yes, sure. First of all, we need to differentiate what we mean by the actor in the Camus sense and what is an actual actor in real life. Because the actual actor in real life will create a lot. He will add a lot of his authenticity to his characters, right? But if we're trying to make a distinction of someone who is only interpreting a role and someone who is creating, we can find a very analogous differentiation between inauthenticity and authenticity. Yes. Heidegger was a thinker also in the beginning of the 20th century who took this question in his philosophy. And Heidegger would claim that our regular mode or our usual mode of being is being inauthentic.
We are inauthentic by default.
Exactly. He uses a concept called the they, das Man. Who is the they? It's like if we are talking about everyone, but in a generic way.
What are they doing?
Exactly. What do they say about this? And this they is not everyone in a sense that it's not us. We are this everyone at the same time. We are the they. We are immersed in the they. And going back to the example of Camus' image of the actor, we would also have someone who is being the they, who is not being himself, if you can put it that way, but he will have moments of authenticity while he's doing that. And perhaps even the decision of being an actor is an authentic decision. You see, it's a complex thing, because you can have two people doing the same thing. One is being inauthentic and the other is being authentic. And there is nothing in their behavior that can tell you about any difference. That's purely how they made their choice.
So, but what underpins authenticity in this case? So what is necessary for you to be authentic and to stop being the they and be the self?
To be honest, Heidegger is not very clear about a lot of things actually, but about this particularly. He makes a differentiation because he understands it's important for his philosophy, but it's not very practical. What Heidegger would include is what he calls resoluteness, is the recognition that we are a being towards death, that we have possibilities before us, we have choices before us, but we understand that we will reach the point of the end of choices. There is a point in our lives where we have no more choices, and this is death. And to recognize death is to recognize what one really wants to do, putting in very practical terms. But that would be an authenticity that would be different from an inauthenticity of, for example, well, if I'm leaving the house, I need to wear clothes. Why are we wearing clothes? We're not thinking about that. We're not thinking, I want to wear clothes because I'm going to die someday. We are just doing that because that's what we are supposed to do.
Okay.
The moments of authenticity are moments where we understand our mortality and we want to do something that is for us, that comes from us.
Something that some people make or pose this question is many philosophical issues, questions are about making choices, and of course choices mean restricting what the realm of what could have been. And then I come with polymathy, and people think, okay, but aren't they opposites? Isn't polymathy the possibility of doing everything? And I have to say, no, polymathy is choosing many things, not one, many. It's not everything, of course. That would be absurd. And that's interesting because when we can find, when we can connect to this perception of one day I will have nothing else to choose, so I should choose best now. And that could be one, that could be many. Some people choose one, they are specialists.
Yes.
Authentic specialists. And some people choose many, being authentic polymaths. But sometimes polymathic people are forced by the day to be specialists, so they are making a choice that's not theirs. And perhaps some people are also thrown into other things that they would not want to be thrown at.
It's very ambiguous. You can have a world in the near future where polymathy is going to be the rule,
Yes.
and then you will have a lot of inauthentic polymathists. That could happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yes, of course, the way, this structure of inauthenticity where we are immersed is also forged by relations of power, by structures of power in society. It's not easy to assess how those things work, and it's not easy to say that if someone is being submissive to the power structures, they are being inauthentic or authentic. You cannot have this answer. Someone can be authentically
conforming to the rules.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned, an authentic specialist in a world of specialists, or you can have, sadly, lots of people that don't want that if they face their mortality, they will not want to be specialists, but they end up being because of those structures.
So we go back to the diversity discussion of Camus. Once again, if we have societal structures that permit more diversity of choices, we're going to end up having more authentic people, or at least you're going to facilitate the process of finding the authentic answers, let's say.
It's a very good link, because Heidegger himself, he does not put more value to authenticity than inauthenticity. He's only describing that those two modes exist. He does not properly care if one is better than the other. But if we link back to Camus, like you have very nicely done, we can try to see that an authentic life where you have more choices or you have more knowledge about the choices you can make and more knowledge about how you can make them, you can have more life. Yeah. You can have more these smiling Sisyphus rolling the rock.
Yeah, and in fact, that's funny because that's the philosophical underpinning of polymathy as a philosophy. So we talked about diversity, which is the first pillar of polymathic breadth. We talk about authenticity, and I'm here being a little bit opposed. A little bit, no, I'm really opposing Heidegger that authenticity can lead to some value, and this is the second pillar, profoundness, which we made the differentiation between the actor and the polymath who would really be in those roles, or would live that. A life, in fact, he would not be in those roles. He would be himself doing something that he wanted, but other people would say, oh, he's been a conqueror now. But he knows he's a polymath that right now, conquering is what he's doing. And so that's the second pillar. And the last pillar of polymath is integration, which has a lot to do with creation. And the other aspect of integration is, in fact, the integration of personality, of the ability of pursuing many authentic interests, regardless of what they think. And in fact, many great creations, innovations come from insights of people who disregarded the status quo. So in the approach I'm taking, of course, is an approach that I'm taking from a scientific view, so it includes empirical tests, etc. And I'm trying to integrate with those philosophical underpinnings, which is very difficult, but I kind of have to look into things through certain angles that are socially accepted or structured like
That's actually very well covered by existentialism, or at least many schools of existentialism, because one thing that you cannot deny is what we call thrownness. We are here in a specific moment of human history with specific values, with under a specific culture. How can you deny that? If you are making a choice that's coming before you, you have different choices to make. Yes, you have different choices to make, but not infinite choices. You have choices to make based on who you are right now, in what society you are right now, and remembering that inauthentic is your mode by default. Like you use that word very nicely. So first of all, we are here. Then we make choices. So all those pragmatic choices and all the choices of conquering or of creating, they are choices that are going to be made in a world that is existing as it is right now, and under a culture and under a structure.
Mm-hmm. The structure gives the repertoire. Of course, you can give your touch, but perhaps your constraints to the instruments you can use to play the orchestra.
Exactly, and how can existentialism work without that? How can you play music without the constraints
of instruments?
Of instruments and of sounds, of the notes. You couldn't make music if you have infinite notes to play. So this is something we need to understand. And this leads us also to another question, that is the recognition of what in hermeneutics is called an horizon. We are always thrown in our historical moment with an horizon. It's not a very easy concept to explain, but let's just imagine that you have this horizon of possibilities, this repertoire, using the word you mentioned, and this is unique to you, unique to your world. When you start looking back at the past, at other people's lives and other historical moments, what you are doing is what Gadamer would call a fusion of horizons. You are actually overtaking the past horizon with your horizon.
All right.
You are never actually seeing the possibilities that those guys in the past saw. You are looking at them based on your possibilities.
In fact, that brings another very important topic, which is when we remember or when we mention some people from the past, we tend to see them in a mythical sense. And it's happening a lot. It happens a lot with Leonardo da Vinci. In fact, it's 500 years of his death. I just given an interview on that. And yeah, his horizon was totally unique and specific. And we create this mythical, sometimes this marketing Leonardo that we sell. And what do you think of that? What do you think of having these figures being, how can I say, approached like that?
If you look at this question with Gadamer lens, there will be no other way. There is no other Leonardo and the one that's useful for us right now for a marketing or for creating a myth or for having an idol, because we cannot be at his horizon. We are in ours. So if we need an idol, we will take someone and put in that box. If we need to sell a story, we will take something and put in that box. I'm not denying history. I'm not denying that things happened that shaped our world. The point is that our world is already shaped by what happened before, and after it is already shaped, it has its own way of functioning. And if it has its own way of functioning, we will take the elements from the past and convert them or overtake them, in Gadamer's word, to our horizon. They will be submitted to the way we want things to be and the way we want our choices to be made possible. Leonardo da Vinci is a critical example because I also identify some kind of distance that we put to him. It's like we can study as much as we want, we can create as much as we want, but we will never be a Leonardo.
Yeah, and that's why many people are afraid to use the term polymath to refer to themselves, as if to be a polymath, you have to be, not a Leonardo, to be the myth, the Leonardo myth. So,
I think we will not have time here to go, for example, into psychoanalysis, but it would be interesting to understand Leonardo as an authoritative figure that you cannot reach, that you cannot overcome, like the Freudian father myth. Because, like we were talking about the Bay and inauthenticity, this is based on the power structures that have shaped our world. Those authoritative figures are part of the structure. You have them, and they served interests of power in some sense. I'm not mentioning that a king decided to use Leonardo as a myth. It doesn't work like that. If we take also Foucault to this conversation, the power structures and the way you put your power into the social games
it's much more
subtle. Precisely, exactly. You have Leonardo already there. We were already born in a world where Leonardo is part of the power structure of our functioning world. So it's very difficult to look back to Leonardo as a human being that was using the bathroom at some point. And yes, I believe that in order to reach a better understanding of our potential in this world, our existential potential, our potential for diversity, our potential for life, we need to be very cautious about having those figures of power, unattainable figures of power.
So to end, let me ask you on a personal note, which is your personal strategy to live a life to the fullest of its potential?
Okay, a personal question. My way of living the life is to keep myself open to perplexity. I enjoy being able to reveal all of my thoughts, and I enjoy, of course, in order to do that, I need to get in touch with more and more thoughts. So I like to engage with different points of views, I like to engage with different modes of living, to always remain open to them, right? I think we are living in a society nowadays that we have several stated rules for groups. So if you are in a group that listens to certain kind of music, this other type of music you shouldn't listen. If you are thinking on, if you like authors on that school of thought, you should hate the other school of thought. And I think this is very prejudicial to us. I think if we want to have a very full life, we need to be at least open to engage with different thoughts. And I like to keep my perplexity, I like to keep my answers open, always to have more questions than answers, and of course, try to survive in this brave new world.
In this ephemeral island of existence.
Yes.
Okay, very nice. Thank you very much, Rodrigo.
Thank
Such
you,
a very
Michael.
nice conversation. Guys, thank you for watching. That's the Polymath Live. I'm Michael Raki. Thank you.